So today I want to talk about a steak cut that's sort of an underdog, that's actually as tender as a ribeye steak or a strip steak, and it also has loads of beefy flavor. It should be coming in at an economical price. Not always though. Today, I want to talk about the flat iron steak. So the flat iron steak is definitely a steak that you have to try at least once, because many people put this steak in their top 5 or even top 3 all-time favorite steak cuts, and I can see why. Here's the thing though, stick around because later on in the video, I do want to talk about price gouging. And I may or may not go on a rant depending on if I cool off in time by the end of this video, but I think it's super important to talk about it. So, what is this cut? What is flat iron steak? And what part of the cow does it come from?
Flat iron steak is actually cut from the shoulder or the chuck, just like the chuck roast. It's also called the top blade or top blade fillet, and sometimes it's called the shoulder top blade. This cut is oftentimes rectangular in shape and comes in many different USDA grades.
So knowing that it comes from the shoulder probably turned you off a bit, but honestly, flat iron steak, that's sort of the misconception. It's actually a very tender cut, and if it's properly marbled, it's gonna have really rich, beefy flavors. Now, one thing I did want to note is if you're getting this from a grocery store, a lot of stores, especially in the grocery stores, they don't really know about this cut and they don't know how to cut it up properly. If you do go to a proper butcher, you should be looking for a nice, uniform, rectangular shape. It should be cleaned up, all the silver skin, all that stuff should be taken off, and it shouldn't just come from a chuck roast. They should be digging deep and they should be getting that top piece. Remember, the second name for this thing is the top blade, right? The top blade cut or the top blade fillet. And you really need to make sure that whoever's cutting it up for you knows about this steak. Because ultimately, you don't want to pay some big prices, and we'll talk about prices later, and you're not really getting the right cut. So this is a great steak, and I think a lot of people are going to automatically assume that you got to cook it to medium rare, and you can. If you like medium rare, go for it. But this is actually a very versatile steak, and I found that I like it right around medium. The good news is if you overcook it, it's incredibly, incredibly forgiving. I mean, if you overcook ribeye or filet mignon or any steak, really, a strip steak, and you go past medium, for me, if you go past medium and now you're into the well done territory, the steak's ruined, right? It's lost all of its flavor. It's dry. It's not that great. I've found with flat iron steak, you can actually take it to well done and it's still good. Not as good as medium or medium rare if you prefer that, but it's still good. It's still tender, still flavorful. It still has a lot of rich flavors in it. So it's a very versatile steak that's forgiving to beginners. So let's talk about seasoning flat iron steak. Well, at least I'm going to talk about how I like to season flat iron steak. I like to keep things simple, and especially if you're having this for the first time, and I highly recommend if you are having flat iron steak for the first time, you should keep things simple when seasoning. And that's primarily because I want you to taste the flavor. I want you to taste that rich, beefy flavor and the tenderness and make a decision on whether or not you like it. Later on, you can do whatever you want, right? You can add in a Brazilian rub, which is great with flat iron steak, or even a dry coffee rub like Fogo. The dry Fogo rub works really well with flat iron steak. But I like to season it with salt, black pepper. Yes, black pepper, even when I'm grilling it. I like the taste of charred black pepper and maybe garlic powder. That's it. I'm happy with those 3 flavors. And then later on, I'll finish it with, after I've cut it up, and you should always cut this up against the grain, I'll finish it with some Molden sea salt, flaky sea salt, and coarse, fresh black pepper. And I love that contrast of black pepper that has been, charred and fresh black pepper. I'm a big fan of black pepper, but that's what I do. And trust me, you're going to taste the steak. And then later on, do whatever you want. How should you cut this steak? I mean, I've seen people cut them into like little strips, and that's fine. I mean, you can do the whole strip thing, and then maybe if you're gonna cut them up into like tacos or something later on, that makes sense. But personally, I like to showcase the steak. So I don't tend to cut them up too thick. This is probably the only steak that I prefer to keep it under an inch, and it tends to work well for me because I want to grill it or cook it fast, right? I don't want to spend too much. This is a steak that's economical, right, in my opinion, but has loads of flavor. So I want to sear it quickly, get it going, and then present it as a flat iron, as a steak, right? So what I usually do is I'll ask them to give me the whole piece, and then I'll split it in half and get about an inch, maybe, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch, depending on the cut of steak. Make sure it's the entire length of it. But again, you want to make sure it is evenly cut. Trim it if you need to. The butcher should already kind of take care of that for you, but trim it, get it into like a nice square rectangular shape. And trust me, people are going to, at first they're going to be like, whoa, what is this? And then a lot of people will misidentify it as a flank steak or a skirt steak or something like that. But then, they can tell something's different. And as soon as they bite into it, their faces kind of change and like, whoa, what is this? It's great. So that's how I like to cut it and prepare it. There are 2 ways to cook up flat iron steak, in my opinion. My 2 favorite ways are in a pan, seared very quickly with medium to medium high heat. And then I like to just baste it in butter, right? Put in, if I have some rosemary and thyme, all that good stuff that we're all used to when cooking up a steak, it works fantastic with that same method, right? And that's kind of the key, right? It's just getting that butter and basting its own beefy flavors, right? Its own rendered fat and beefiness, and just letting the steak absorb all of that. It's just fantastic. So the next place that I like to cook flat iron steak is right here on the grill. I don't even bother doing the reverse sear method. I just sear it real quick on each side and just do a really quick sear, quick and easy, and that's it. And usually, because I've cut them so thin, that's going to get me at a perfect medium rare if that's what you want. But again, the steak's really forgiving, so you could overshoot and it's still going to be great. I usually don't cook on my gas grill. I prefer my charcoal grill. But since today we're only cooking one steak and I don't feel like starting up my charcoal grill for one steak, we're going to do it on the gas grill. But it's still fantastic on the gas grill or the pellet grill. There's something about having that flame kiss, right? Just having the flames kiss the steak and creating that char. It gives you a completely different flavor profile than the pan. If you're doing it on the pan with butter and just letting it stew in its own juices, or grilling it on an open flame, you're going to get great results.
With medium rare or rare, I feel like the steak has a little bit more toughness, which is why I prefer it at medium. I feel like it's a lot more tender and just melts in your mouth. But honestly, it's good either way.
All right, I wanted to take some time to talk about price gouging. Here's my little rant. I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet. I am just so tired of all the inflated prices that are happening like everywhere. The corporate greed and the price gouging. So the guy that I usually get this from, my butcher, is closed right now. All right, this is a good time to just kind of go and see other shops and other butchers and just kind of figure out what's out there. I went to a few places. The steaks that I ended up getting were fine. The butcher that actually sold them to me gave them to me at $8.99. Now, my guy usually gives them to me at $6.50 a pound. He gave them to me choice grade, all choice grade, at $8.99, which is okay. I mean, it's a little inflated, but it's reasonable, right? And the other place that I went to, the guy was asking $16.99 for choice grade flat iron steak. Choice grade. We're not talking about prime, okay? $16.99. He had his choice grade ribeye at $18.99. And I seriously looked at him and I was like, are you sure you have the right? This is flat iron steak. And he's like, yep. I'm like, the shoulder cut, right? Similar to Chuck, sometimes they call it the top blade fillet. Flat iron, right? And he's like, yep. We sell it at $16.99. Choice grade, right? Yep, $16.99. I had to tell him no thank you and left. There is price gouging going. Remember, this is an economical cut. Okay, it's not meant to replace ribeye or even compete with ribeye or filet mignon. It's a great steak, but what makes it so great and worthwhile is that it is an economical cut that you can enjoy right in between the pricier cuts. I may lose some of you guys here, but if I had to choose between flat iron and ribeye, there is no world where I would put flat iron over ribeye. And there should be no price gouging going on. This should be nowhere near the price of ribeye, right, for a choice grade cut. There is a lot of people out there that have caught on to the popularity of flat iron and hanger steak and have decided to raise the prices, but have forgotten that the whole point that these things got popular was because they are economical. If you go to a place that's price gouging, I suggest that you guys boycott them. And that's what I did with that shop. I was like, nope, I'm not doing this. Sorry. Thank you for your time. I'm going to go someplace else. And I remember he was like, hey, this is very popular. Everybody likes this. I'm like, yeah, it's popular. It's great, but I'm not paying that price. And I can tell he didn't like my response, but I don't care. Boycott them, guys. The cow better be shitting out gold if I'm going to be paying anything over like $8.99 a pound for flat iron steak. That's just my opinion. Enjoy this cut, but don't get ripped off. Okay, so what are my final thoughts on flat iron steak? This is definitely a steak that you need to try. If you are a beef lover, steak lover, it should be in your arsenal of steak rotations if you can get it at a good price. Again, make sure that you're not being taken advantage of. It has gained popularity, rightfully so, over the last 5-10 years or so. It's a fabulous cut. I mean, super tender. You can overcook it and it still tastes great. I mean, it really is a wonderful piece of steak. I've already done a video on other underdog steak. Like, for example, steak picanha. Steak picanha is in my top 5 for sure. But another video that I want to do real soon, it's called The Butcher's Cut for a reason, is hanger steak. So look for a future video where I talk about hanger steak. And if you like this series, please suggest some more steaks below. Leave me a comment. What's your favorite underdog steak? I'd love to hear from you guys. That's it for me, guys. I hope you found this video informative. And if you did, please consider subscribing and joining our channel memberships. I'll catch you in the next video. I love steak videos.